I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you joining us today for our presentation of the Frederick Douglass powerful 1852 speech. And it was called, "What to the Slave is Your 4th of July?" Great question. This collaborative reading, organized by the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire, holds a great significance as we reflect on history's lessons and their relevance to our present and future. History serves as a crucial lens through which we understand how the past has shaped our world today. It offers us insight to learn from past mistakes and injustices, guiding us toward a more just and compassionate future for our community, for our society, and humanity at large. During America's formative years, our nation grappled with the abhorrent institution of slavery, a chapter steeped in shame and cruelty. The mistreatment of fellow human beings, the acceptance of their degradation, and the systemic abuses inflicted upon them stand as an enduring scar on our collective conscience. Frederick Douglass, after escaping slavery in Maryland in 1838, became a prominent leader in the abolitionist movement. His speech, delivered on July 5th, 1852, starkly challenges the hypocrisy of celebrating freedom while millions remained enslaved. He refused to speak on July 4th, a day of the celebration that rang hollow for those still in chains. Douglass's words in his speech are indeed harsh, yet undeniably true. They echo a universal truth that resonates with all who have endured oppression throughout history and continue to do so today. It is incumbent upon us to heed these words, to internalize the lessons that history has given us, and to ensure that injustices are never repeated. Today, as we come together to honor Frederick Douglass's legacy and the enduring struggle for justice for all, let us reaffirm our commitment to equality, dignity, and human rights for all. May this reading deepen our understanding, inspire reflection, and strengthen our resolve to create a future where freedom and justice prevail for every individual. Thank you for being here for this important event. I'm going to get us started with the speech. Mr. President, friends and fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before any assembly more shrinkingly, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do this day. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulty to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I'm here today is, to me, a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude. This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It's the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I'm glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon.
Fellow citizens, 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You were under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government, England as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home did impose in the exercise of its parental prerogatives upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as, in its mature judgment, it deemed wise, right, and proper. But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and altogether such as ought not to be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need to say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers. Feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn. Yet they persevered. Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victims of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at this distance of time, regard it. The timid and the prudent of that day were, of course, shocked and alarmed by it. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful. But amid all their terror and affrighted vociferations against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on, and the country with it. On the 2nd of July, 1776, the old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day whose transparency is at all equal it. Resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown. Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny. Pride, and patriotism, not less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate and to hold it in perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the ringbolt to the chain of your nation's destiny. So indeed, I regard it. The principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles. Be true to them on all occasions, in all places, against all foes, at whatever cost. Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. They loved their country better than their own private interests, and all will concede that it is a rare virtue that ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is not in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country. In their admiration of liberty, they lost sight of all other interests. They were peacemen, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with these degenerate times. How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements. How unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away in strength into the distant future. Mark them, fully appreciating the hardships to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, wisely measuring the terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, laid the cornerstone of the national superstructure, which has risen and still rises in grandeur around you. Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary. Our eyes are met with demonstrations of joyous enthusiasm. The causes which led to the separation of the colonies from the British Crown have never lacked for a tongue. They have all been taught in your common schools, narrated at your firesides, unfolded from your pulpits, and thundered from your legislative halls, and are as familiar to you as household words. They form the staple of your national poetry and eloquence. I leave, therefore, the great deeds of your fathers to others.
My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and his cause is the ever-living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. Now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers unless your children are to be blessed by your labors. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, for both our sakes, your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to those questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world.
My subject, the fellow citizen, is American slave. I shall see this day from the slave point of view. Standing here, identify with the American bandman, making his wrong mine. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declaration of the past or to the profession of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and blending slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity which is outraged, the name of liberty which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in caution to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that served to perpetuate slavery, the great sin of shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by the prejudice or who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just. I fancy, I hear some of my audience say, it is just this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists failed to make a favorite impression on the public mind? Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and revoke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slave creed would you have me argued? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia, which, if committed by a black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? Southern statute books are covered with enactment forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beast of the field, then I might consent to argue that the manhood of the slave, when the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea, and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then I will argue with you that the slave is a man. Is it not astonishing that while we are planting and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and seafaring, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we engage in all manner of enterprise common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whales in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planting, living in families as husbands, wives, and children. And above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God and looking hopefully for life and immortality behind the grave. We are called upon to prove that we are men.
Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an assault to your understanding. There's no a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What? Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their rations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters. Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I would not. I have better employment for my time and strength than such arguments would imply. What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine? That God did not establish it? That our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such argument is past. At a time like this, scorching irony, not conversing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting, ridicule, blasting, reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The property of the nation must be settled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crime against God and human must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. The boasted liberty and unholy silence. Your national greatness swirling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-forested impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and harmonies, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your ridiculous parade and solemnity, are to him more bombast, fraud, deception, impurity, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchy and despotism of the old world. Search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation. And you will say with me that for barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. Take American slave trade, which we are told by the papers, in especially prosperous just now, as the price of Maine was never higher, and which carried on in all the large towns and cities in one half of this confederacy. This trade is one of the peculiar of American institutions. In Rivera's states, this trade is chief cause of wealth. Is this called the internal slave trade? In order to divert from in the horror with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated.
The foreign slave trade has long since been denounced by the government as piracy, as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, this nation keeps a squadron of immense force on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in the country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike to the laws of God and men. It is, however, a notable fact that while so much exaggeration is poured out by the Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the most engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable. Behold the practical application of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover? I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all of our southern states. They perambulate the country and crowd the highways of the nation in droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh jobbers armed with a pistol and a whip and a bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly or by lots to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and for the deadly sugar mill. Mark the said procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There, see the old man with locks of thinned and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, upon the young mother, whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, her briny tears falling on the brow of the babe in her arms. See that girl of 13, weeping, yes, weeping as she thinks of the mother from whom she has been torn. The drove moves steadily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap, like a rifle shot. The fetters clank and the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seems to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of the slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the babe. Her speed has faltered under the weight of that child, and the chains that gash on her shoulder bears the toll of the whip as they move on. Follow this drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever, and never forget the deep, sad sobs that arise from this gathered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where under the sun can you witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking? Yet this is but a glance of the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the ruling part of the United States. I was born amid such sights and scenes. To me, the American slave trade is a terrible reality. The fleshmongers gather up their victims by dozens and drive them chained to the General Depot of Baltimore. When a sufficient number has been collected, here a ship is chartered for the purpose of conveying them to Mobile or to New Orleans. From the slave prison to the ship, they are usually driven in the darkness of the night, in the deep, still darkness of midnight. I have often been aroused by the dead, heavy footsteps and the piteous cries of the chained gangs that passed our door. Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today an active operation in our boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets, where the victims are to be sold like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderest ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of the buyers and sellers of men. My soul sickens at that sight. But a still more inhumane, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented. By an act of the American Congress, not yet 2 years ago, slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. Mason-Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia. The power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children, slaves, remains no longer mere a state institution, but it is now an institution of the whole United States. The power to coexist with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where these go may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where there are men is not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun by that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees. The liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad Republican domain is hunting ground for men.
Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your secretary of state, enforce as a duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God that you do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have within the past 2 years been hunted down and, without a moment's warning, hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children dependent on them for bread, but of this no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage and to all rights in this republic, the rights of God included. For black men there is neither law nor justice, humanity nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery and $5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any 2 villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black man into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witnesses for himself. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear about one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor. Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe and are bound, in deciding the case of a man's liberty, to hear only his accusers. In glaring violation of justice, in shameless disregard of the forms of administering law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent, this fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation. Americans, your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, and your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of the nation is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl your anathemas at the crown-headed tyrants of Russia and Austria, and pride yourselves on your democratic institutions, while you yourselves consent to be the mere tools and bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina. You invite to your shores fugitives of oppression from abroad, honor them with banquets, greet them with ovations, cheer them, toast them, salute them, protect them, and pour out your money to them like water. But the fugitives from your own land, you advertise, hunt, arrest, shoot, and kill. You glory in your refinement, in your universal education, yet you maintain a system as barbarous and dreadful as ever stained the character of a nation, a system begun in avarice, supported in pride, and perpetuated in cruelty. You shed tears over fallen Hungary and make the sad story of her wrongs the theme of your poets, statesmen, and orators, till your gallant sons are ready to fly to arms to vindicate her cause against the oppressor. But in regard to the 10,000 wrongs of the American slave, you would enforce the strictest silence, and would hail him as an enemy of the nation who dares to make those wrongs the subject of public discourse. You are all on fire at the mention of liberty for France or for Ireland, but here are as cold as an iceberg at the thought of liberty for the enslaved American. You discourse eloquently on the dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which in its very essence casts a stigma upon labor. You can bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off a 3-penny tax on tea, and yet wring the last hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate, and glory in your hatred, all men whose skins are not colored like your own. You declare before the world, and are understood by the world to declare, that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, you hold securely in a bondage which, according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose, a 7th part of the inhabitants of your country.
Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further upon your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as base pretense, your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad, It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion and makes your name a hissing and a byword mocking of the earth. It is the antagonistic force in your government, the only thing that seriously disturbs and endangers your union. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride, it breeds insolence, it promotes vice, it shelters crime. It is a curse to the earth that supports it, and yet you cling to it as if it were a sheet anchor of all your hopes. Be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from the hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 million crush and destroy it forever. But it is answered in a reply to all of this, that precisely what I have now denounced is, in fact, guaranteed and sanctioned by the Constitution of the United States, that the right to hold and to hunt slaves is a part of that Constitution framed by the illustrious fathers of this republic. Then I dare to affirm, notwithstanding all I have said before, your fathers, instead of being honest men, I have before declared them to be, were the veriest impostors that ever practiced on mankind. This is the inevitable conclusion, and from there is no escape. But I differ from those who charge this baseness on the framers of this Constitution of the United States. It is a slander upon their memory, at least. So I believe, and others have, I think, fully and clearly vindicated the Constitution from any design to support slavery for an hour. Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented on the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery.
The arm of the Lord is not shortened, and the doom of slavery is certain. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope. While drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, my spirit is also cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not stand in same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot round in the same old path of its fathers without interference. The time was when such could be done. Long-established customs of hurtful character could formally fence themselves in and do their evil work with social impunity. Knowledge was then confined and enjoined by the privileged few, and the multitude walked on in mental darkness. But a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have become unfashionable. The arm of commerce has borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. It makes its pathway over and under the sea as well on the earth. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. The far-off and almost fabulous Pacific rolls in grandeur at our feet. The celestial empire, the mystery of ages is being solved. The fiat of the Almighty, let there be light, has not yet spent its force. No abuse, no outrage, whether in taste, sport, or avarice, can now hide itself from the all-pervading light. The iron shoe and crippled foot of China must be seen in contrast with nature. Africa must rise and put on her yet unwoven garment. Ethiopia shall stretch out her hand unto God. In the fervent aspirations of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying, please, everyone, and our readers, let's recite together. God speed the year of Jubilee, wise called of yore, when from their galling chains set free, the oppressed shall vilely bend the knee, and wear the yoke of tyranny like brutes no more. That year will come, and freedom's reign, to man his plundered rights again restore. God speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow. In every clime be understood the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend, each foe.
Our friend Frederick Douglass had strong words for us, for our country, and for those he spoke with many, many years ago. It was a verbal vigil, if you will, that we still hold today. And the last thing that we read is a transition into hope. And so with that thought, I bring you closing greetings. Greetings, neighbors, friends, brothers, and sisters. I bring you love, peace, joy, and hope. We have the capacity to be radical in giving grace to others as well as to ourselves. We have the authority to forgive people, no matter what it might look like to others. We have the determination to form a community with people who may look differently, speak differently, believe differently, and even live differently from us. It is not the differences that bind us, it is the similarities we should search for. It is the shared hopes, dreams, and desires for a better community, the opportunity to live a peaceable life, and the desire to leave any place we enter better with our participation than when we arrived. It is our unwritten duty to be love, the hands and feet of love in action, to be hope, to live a life of unshakable hope, no matter what it may look like to others, to be joy, a picture of joy and delight in the smallest of things, to be courageous, to walk in strength and courage, the courage to reach out to someone you may not normally include in your everyday life, to be peace, to not only be a peacemaker, but to have a mind and a heart that is steadfast on the daily achievement of spiritual, relational, and emotional peace. These efforts are powerful and require self-discipline and a bit of sacrifice. Your time, your plans, or your desires may need to be altered just a little, but it is well worth the endeavor to build a community filled with love and hope. I would like to leave you with this amazing quote I feel sums up a reachable goal for our community, our family, in the place that we call home. We will work to be an example of how we as brothers and sisters on this earth should treat each other. Now, more than ever, the illusions of division threaten our very existence. We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. We must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe. Because I love movies, this comes from the movie Black Panther, and this is a speech that T'Challa gave to the UN, but I think it's very apropos for where we are today and the direction that we all want to head. And I thank you all for your time and for allowing me to share my heart with you today.
Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of the day.